Where legends breathe again. Eldmyth. Imagine the space between breaths, the silence between heartbeats, the landscape you cross when the sun dies and the path home dissolves into shadow. Our story does not begin with heroes or gods, but with the guides and guardians of those final, liminal places. The passages no living soul is meant to walk. Tonight, we venture into the bestiary of the in-between, the taxonomy of transition. We will meet 5 entities bound not by flesh but by function. They are the wardens of the ultimate threshold, the escorts for the soul's last, lonely journey. In every corner of the world, in the deep memory of every culture, humanity has conjured them, beings who exist solely to navigate the borderlands between life and what comes after. These are not monsters of tooth and claw, but of profound, unsettling purpose. They are the psychopomps, the soul carriers. Their domain is the sigh of the dying, the chill of the uncrossed river, the path through the forest that has no end in sunlight. From the sobbing spirit bound to earthly waters, to the detached winged hunter of the Philippine night, to the elegant, lethal harvester from beyond the western sea, they are variations on a theme of finality. We fear them not because they seek to harm the living without cause, but because their very presence is a mirror held up to our deepest, most primal anxiety, that the journey's end is not an empty piece, but a transaction, and that some who walk that path are not volunteers, but are chosen. Some stories of these guides have been softened over centuries, their edges sanded down into cautionary tales or romantic notions. But in their oldest, most potent forms, they carry the scent of soil from a grave that is not your own, and a patience that has outlasted empires. Let us now meet them, and listen for the footsteps that fall in time with a slowing pulse. Before there was Charon with his obol, before Anubis weighed the heart against the feather, the concept of the guide existed in the collective shiver of humanity. The underworld psychopomp is not a single creature, but an archetype, an emergent law of the mythological universe. Its habitat is the transition itself, the crumbling edge of the world, the root of the cosmic tree, the cave mouth that breathes a wind smelling of damp stone and forgotten spices. Their physical forms are as varied as the cultures that dreamed them, yet they share an unnatural cohesion. They are often cloaked, hooded, or masked, features obscured because a face implies kinship, and there can be none here. Their anatomy is built for purpose. Long limbs for reaching, wide shoulders for carrying, eyes that see not light but the fading glow of the soul's ember. They do not walk as we walk. They glide or stand impossibly still, having arrived before you even knew the journey had begun. Their behavior is one of terrifying, immutable protocol. They are the ultimate bureaucrats of the afterlife. They do not hate, they do not love, they facilitate. A coin is placed, a name is spoken, a judgment is passed, and their charge is accepted. To encounter one is to have your fate irrevocably confirmed. Legends speak of heroes who challenged them, who tried to run or fight. The psychopomp never raises a weapon, it simply waits. It has forever, you do not. The fear they inspire is pure, a fear of the system itself. The reverence is shown through meticulous death rites, coins on eyes, amulets over the heart, precise prayers, all designed to ensure this entity sees you as a valid passenger, not as driftwood to be swept away. Symbolically, they represent the human mind's refusal to accept chaos and death. We demand a procedure, a gatekeeper, a ferryman. Even the abyss must have its port authority. The legacy of the psychopomp is etched into every funeral rite ever conducted. We still dress our dead with care, not for the corpse, but for the conductor we hope is watching, ledger in hand. From the impersonal guide, we descend to a soul forever denied that passage. Her domain is not the underworld river, but the earthly ones, the Rio Grande, the neglected canals, the muddy banks where willow roots drink. This is La Llorona, the weeping woman. Her origin is a fracture in the soul, a story born from colonial trauma and maternal despair, so catastrophic it broke the barrier between grief and geography. Her habitat is the sound of moving water at night. She is the mist that rises from it. To see her is to hear her first, a ragged, suffocating sob that seems to come from the water itself, from the reeds, from the air in your lungs. Her physical form is a study in perpetual erosion. She is often described in a drenched white gown, her long black hair like riverweed. Her face, when seen, is a hollowed mask of anguish, but her hands are the true horror, elongated, pale, forever reaching, shaped by the memory of a weight they can no longer hold. La Llorona does not hunt in the traditional sense. She is a predator of resonance. She is drawn to the living, especially children, not by malice but by a shattered, recursive instinct. She seeks to replace what she lost, but her touch is the touch of the drowned. Her weeping is a siren song of unbearable sorrow, meant to lure the compassionate, the lonely, or the guilty close enough to the water's edge. To share her fate is to be adopted into her endless, liquid purgatory. The fear she commands is the fear of grief made sentient and contagious. The reverence is complex. Offerings are sometimes left for her, not to worship, but to placate. A doll, a candle, a prayer for her restless soul to find peace, lest her attention turn to your own family. She symbolizes the horror of the unforgivable mistake, the action that exiles you from both life and death. She is a psychopomp who failed her own children, now forever trapped at the departure point, mistaking every living soul for a passenger she must, but cannot, correctly guide. Across the Atlantic, in the mist-bound glens and ancient fairy hills of Scotland, the guide takes a more aristocratic and far more predatory form. This is the Baavan Shee, the white fairy woman of the Highlands. Her origin is in the old, capricious, and fiercely territorial gods of the land, diminished into the fairy folk but losing none of their potency. She is a psychopomp for a specific, tragic purpose. Her habitat is the lonely stream in the high moor, the secluded waterfall, the edge of the forest where the moss grows a shade too green. She is often seen washing blood from linen or armor in the water, her keening song heard before the battle has even been fought. Her physical presence is deceptively beautiful, skin pale as cream, hair like spun moonlight, eyes of a piercing, inhuman blue. She moves with an elegance that is both alluring and utterly devoid of warmth. She is beauty carved from ice, and given a voice that can shatter bone with sorrow. The Baavan Shee is an omen, a collector. Her behavior is not one of random predation, but of selection. She appears to members of a specific family, an ancient lineage, to keen for them. Her song is not a forecast of death, it is its confirmation. To hear it is to have your name already written in her ledger. She is the personification of a family's doom, a fate so intertwined with the land itself that it has a custodian. She does not cause the death, but she announces it, claims it, and arguably escorts the soul from the battlefield or the sickbed. The fear she inspires is one of legacy and inescapable bloodlines. The reverence is shown through absolute avoidance and silence. One does not speak of her. One does not seek her streams. To acknowledge her is to risk her attention. Symbolically, she represents the idea that some destinies are so powerful they generate their own mythological ecosystem. She is the environmental consequence of ancestral pact or curse, a permanent, elegant fixture in the landscape, waiting for her next charge to mature into their fate. Her connection to La Llorona is stark. Both are tied to water and weeping. But where La Llorona is chaos and regret, the Baavan Shee is order and cruel, elegant duty. We travel now to the fever dream humidity of the Philippine archipelago, where the psychopomp sheds its solemnity and becomes something violently, biologically alien. The Manananggal. Its origin is in a deep, visceral fear of predation from within the community, of the neighbor or the beautiful stranger who is, in truth, a parasite on the cycle of life itself. Its habitat is the pregnant night, the time when the air is thick and still. By day, it appears as a stunning woman, but its true environment is the space between roof and rafters, the dark gap above the sleeping family. Its physical transformation is a grotesque masterpiece of myth. The upper torso detaches, sprouting vast, leathery bat-like wings, while the lower half is left standing, vulnerable in the home. The elongated, proboscis-like tongue is the tool of its trade. The Manananggal's behavior is a perversion of the psychopomps' role. It does not guide souls away. It forcibly extracts life from those on the threshold of creating it. It seeks out pregnant women, using its long tongue to suck the hearts of fetuses or the unborn life from the womb. It is a thief of potential, a harvester of futures. It represents a fear that death is not just an end, but a targeted predatory force that consumes not just the individual, but the lineage, the next generation, in its most vulnerable state. The fear is met with fierce, practical reverence, bundles of garlic, blessed salt, and the secret location of its lower half, which must be found and destroyed before dawn forces it to reunite. Symbolically, the Manananggal is the embodiment of infant mortality and miscarriage, given a monstrous, culpable form. It externalizes a profound, ancient trauma. Its detached form is key. It is a creature literally divided, living in two states, a perfect metaphor for its role as a being that exists between life and the snuffing of life before it begins. It is the anti-guide, ensuring some souls never even start the journey. Our final entity returns us to the concept of the guide, but strips it of any pretense of natural order or even tragic purpose. We go to early Japanese folklore, before the Shinigami became the standardized, cloaked reaper of modern media. In its oldest forms, the Shinigami was not a singular being, but a nebulous, contagious force, a death spirit. Its habitat was not a landscape, but a state of mind. It dwelled in deep despair, in obsessive thought in the moment of suicidal ideation. It had no true form. It was a shadow that grew longer than it should, a whisper that echoed your own darkest thoughts back to you, a sudden, unbearable weight on your back. It was less a guide and more a catalyst, an opportunistic entity that magnified human suffering until the soul chose to depart on its own. This early Shinigami did not carry a sickle. It carried a mirror. It showed you your life as a burden, your future as an endless, desolate road. It was the psychological embodiment of the tipping point. Encounters were not battles but surrenders. A person would simply feel its presence, a cold, persuasive emptiness beside them, and soon after would take their own life. The fear was of one's own mind turning against itself, given an external, malignant shape. The reverence was in intricate rituals to ward off despair, in community bonds, in avoiding isolation, the conditions where the Shinigami could grow. Symbolically, it represents the terrifying idea that the final guide might not come from an external afterlife bureaucracy, but from the darkest recesses of the self, given agency. It completes our set, from the impersonal ferryman to the trapped weeper, the familial omen, the biological predator, and finally, to the inner voice of oblivion made manifest. It is the psychopomp as depression, proving that the threshold can be crossed from within, and something waits on the other side to welcome those who open the door themselves. Let the silence settle now. Let the images fade. Picture the landscapes they have left behind. The riverbank empty now, save for the imprint of knees in the soft mud. The highland stream flowing clear and cold over smooth stones, the phantom song absorbed into the rush of water. The dark space beneath the roof, where only dust motes dance in a moonbeam. The silent room where a shadow once grew teeth. These are the negative spaces, the stages after the actor has departed. They are more terrifying in a way than the creatures themselves, for they prove that the domain is permanent. The ferryman's dock remains, waiting. The weeping woman's bend in the river continues to erode its banks. The ferry's waterfall never ceases its flow. The threshold is not an event, it is a location, woven into the geography of the world and the psyche. It is always there in the corner of your vision, in the pause at the end of an exhale. The entities are just its permanent staff. Look at any lonely place long enough, with the right kind of fear, and you will see the shape of the office, ready for its occupant to return. So what do these 5 wardens of the final inch tell us? They are not random monsters. They are a coherent psychological and environmental response. Each one maps a different point of anxiety about the ultimate transition. The underworld psychopomp addresses the fear of anonymity and death, the need for a procedure, a recognized passage. La Llorona embodies the terror of being trapped by emotion, of grief so strong it becomes a cage, blurring the lines between guide and victim. The Baavan Shee speaks to the dread of predetermined fate, of death as an inherited trait, announced by the land itself. The Manananggal externalizes the specific, visceral horror of death attacking life at its source, perverting nature's cycle. The early Shinigami confronts the most intimate fear, that the guide is not external, but a shape our own crumbling mind gives to despair. Their shared domain is the liminal, the riverbank, the fog, the moment between sleeping and waking, the thought between hope and surrender. They are all, in essence, environmental. They are born from the landscape of fear. A culture living by mighty rivers will conjure a ferryman. A society steeped in complex clan loyalties will birth a familial omen. An island community familiar with parasitic creatures will imagine a detached, life-sucking horror. They are the ecosystem of mortality given a face, a form, and a rulebook. The connection is function. They are the solution to the unthinkable chaos of death. Better a weeping woman, a fairy seer, a grotesque vampire than the silent, meaningless void. They are proof that humanity would rather be harvested than forgotten. In our modern world, with our clinical language and mapped continents, these creatures have not vanished. They have migrated. They are the ghosts in our machines, the analogs in our stories. The impersonal underworld psychopomp has become the cool, automated voice of the system, the faceless bureaucrat in a cosmic corporation. La Llorona haunts our true crime tales and ghost hunting shows, a symbol of unresolved trauma echoing through generations. The Baavan Shee's familial doom is the genetic disease, the hereditary curse in a Gothic novel, the tragic destiny of a superhero's bloodline. The Manananggal's predatory theft of future life finds its echo in dystopian fiction about infertility plagues or soul-harvesting entities. The early Shinigami's whisper is the personification of depression in modern media, the seductive voice of the void in a character's darkest hour. Our fascination has transformed fear into archetype. We dress them in new costumes. The cloaked reaper with a scythe is a sanitized, universal brand of the psychopomp. We play them in games, animate them in films. But in this sanitization, we often lose the environmental weight, the specific, soil-deep terror they carried. We turn guides into antagonists, omens into bosses to be defeated. Yet in our best modern horror, the old truth resurfaces. The true terror is not the creature, but the threshold it guards. The fear that some doors, once seen, cannot be unseen, and some paths only have one direction of travel. What then does this persistent pantheon of passage tenders say about us? It says we are creatures of story, yes, but more deeply, we are creatures of structure. We abhor a narrative vacuum. The great blank unknown of death is an existential chaos we cannot bear, so we populate it. We give it rules, gatekeepers, forms, and flaws. We imagine an ecology for the afterlife because the alternative, a silent, unobserved exit, is intolerable. These beings allow us to negotiate, to bribe with coins, to avoid with taboos, to plead with through offerings. They give us a semblance of control, or at least, a comprehensible reason for the lack thereof. They transform the passive act of dying into an active journey, with landmarks, hazards, and conductors. They confirm that our lives and our deaths are significant enough to require specialized personnel. They speak to our awe of nature, not the gentle beauty, but the nature that is a vast, amoral recycling system. The psychopomp is the humanizing face we put on that recycling process. It is easier to be led by a hooded ferryman than to be mere compost returning to the earth. These creatures are the stories we tell to hide the terrifying machinery of existence from ourselves. They are the velvet drape over the guillotine. So tonight, as the world outside your window grows quiet, listen, not for footsteps, but for the spaces between sounds. Look not for shapes, but for the outlines left when the light fails. The river still flows. The mist still rises from it. The unmarked path is still there, at the edge of the familiar wood. The chair in the empty hall still waits. These stories are not mere entertainment. They are sensory organs we have grown to perceive the contours of the ultimate frontier. The weeper's sob may be the wind in the wires. The fairy keen may be the creak of an old house settling. The shadow on the wall may be just a trick of the light. But perhaps in believing them, even for the length of a story, we perform the oldest ritual of all. We acknowledge the threshold, we respect the guides, and we whisper into the growing dark a reminder to ourselves that we are still here on this side, for now, and the journey when it comes will have a name, and a face, and a purpose, and we, in our endless need to understand, have already drawn its portrait 1,000 times in the dark with the oldest colors we possess: fear, wonder, and the desperate love for the light we know must one day fade. Go carefully and listen to the water. Another legend fades, but the next awaits. Like this video, subscribe and continue the journey through myths.